So please pray for them and make sure that they are able to stay safe and that they are able to complete the work with which God has called them for in New Mexico. So I'm going to start today by listing out some stuff and how fast it is. The typical human being can walk about 2 to 3 miles an hour. Usain Bolt, the fastest human being on Earth, can clock out at a top speed of 28 miles an hour. Cheetahs can clock in at 75 miles an hour. The fastest street legal cars can go anywhere between 250 and 300 miles an hour. The fastest aircraft in the world can go around 4,000 to 7,000 miles per hour. To get to the next fastest thing, you have to go all the way out to the outer reaches of our solar system, where the man-made Voyager 1 spacecraft is currently traveling at 38,500 miles an hour. But the fastest thing known to man is the speed of light, which travels at 6,700,000 miles per hour, which can travel around the Earth 7.5 times in 1 second. Now, why am I telling you about all these things? What do these things have in common? None of them, even light, has the ability to escape the intense gravitational field of a black hole. A black hole can take in anything, including light. And sometimes I imagine our human cravings and human desires as a black hole, because we try to take in all these things that we think can make us happy, whether it's a house, a car, friendships, money, power, respect. And we pull these things in, and they don't satisfy us. And a black hole is not satisfied when it captures light or planets or asteroids, whatever it may be. It continues to truck along and try to get more. It is never, quote unquote, satisfied, if I can use that to describe an inanimate object. So today, I would like to focus on a man who tried to satisfy himself through the best of what this world has to offer. And his name is King Solomon. I'd like to look at 3 different stages or states of his life. The first state would be his initial dedication to God and all of the success he managed to have as king of Israel. The second stage is when he strayed from God, and which kind of spurred a midlife crisis for him. And the third stage is when he returned to God with the realization that God is more important than all. Sorry, spoiler alert. So this is the good, the bad, and the ugly of King Solomon. So the first state I want to talk about is his initial success and his dedication to God. For those of you who don't know, King Solomon is one of the sons of the famous King David. And when Solomon was about 12 years old, his father was dying. And Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, came to King David and urged him to give King Solomon the kingdom, because another man had risen up and was trying to take the kingdom from King Solomon. King David, on his deathbed, said that it was time for King Solomon to become king. So, one of the first things I want to talk about is how Solomon had a family, he had a loving mother, and at the age of 12, he had the entire kingdom of Israel. Later, Solomon asked God for wisdom and a vision, and God granted that to him, along with many other wonderful things, such as riches. Because of his wisdom and Solomon's uncanny ability to judge and make really wise decisions, he was given a lot of respect from the people, particularly in the famous story where he was going to cut a baby in half and see which mother would be interested in not having that happen. Decisions like that had him earn respect. The story of Solomon is heavily documented in 1 Kings and in 2 Chronicles, and that's where I'm going to be pulling a lot of scripture from, but I'm not going to have us read it because there's a lot of scripture that details all of the possessions of Solomon. What I'm trying to do here at first is establish the fact that Solomon had almost anything that can make a person happy on this earth. So we see that he's had a loving family, he has power, control over Israel, and because of his wisdom, he was given respect. So he already has several things that has the potential to make him happy forever. In 1 Kings chapter 4, we see that Solomon was given the best food and a whole lot of it. He had dozens of cattle and a ton of pounds of flour and other basic ingredients like that. to satisfy his nourishment on a daily basis, along with his servants and his, I'm sure, many, many friends. We also see in 1 Kings chapter 4 that Solomon had the latest and the greatest transportation. He had thousands of horses to choose from. Fast horses, slow horses, pretty horses, etc. In 1 Kings chapter 6, we find out that Solomon has been tasked with building the temple of the Lord. So now he has a job, a career, something that a lot of people think can bring them joy. That's something they can pursue the rest of their lives and that they can better themselves in. In 1 Kings chapter 7, it's noted that Solomon gets to build his own palace, which is half a football field long, and he got to build it with the highest quality materials available: cedar trees, high-grade stone, things that we don't build our houses with anymore, but they were really cool back then. So in summary, Solomon had all the following. He had a loving family, and he had friends who may or may not have been there because of his lots of money, but he had friends. He had wisdom, he had power, and he had respect. Solomon had plenty of high-quality food to nourish him. He had so many different horses to choose from, which I kind of equate to our current-day cars. His palace, he got to design himself, and it was made through probably slave labor, and it was made through the best materials available. And, in case I forgot to mention, he has $1 billion salary. He received, I believe, 600-something talents of gold, which equates out to about 25,000 kilograms of gold, which equates to about $1 billion a year. And that's not including all the taxation and other things he collected from merchants. So, through earthly standards, Solomon should have been one of the happiest people to ever live. He had everything he needed: family, friends, wisdom, power, respect, food, horses, his own house that he got to design himself, and a huge salary. So just keep this in mind when we talk about the next stages of his life. I think Solomon puts this best himself in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 4 to 10. Which I will shorten for him. There it is. He says, "I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted myself vineyards. I made myself gardens and orchards, all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants and had servants born in my house. Yes, I had greater possessions of herds and flocks than all who were in Jerusalem before me. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of kings and of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers and the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kinds. So I became great and excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure. For my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor." So what do we get from that? We get that Solomon was so powerful and so rich that he could have anything he wanted. Anything at all on earth. But, as we will soon discover, that did not necessarily bring him eternal joy. Along with this, in this stage of his life, he was pretty dedicated to the Lord. After he built the temple and after he built his palace, in 1 Kings chapter 8, Solomon had a long and lengthy prayer where he dedicated himself, the Israelites, and the temple to the Lord. So everything's great. Solomon's dedicated to the Lord. He's got a ton of money, food. What could go wrong? Well, this is when we're going to hit stage 2 of his life. He begins to deviate from his commitment to God. We can see that in 1 Kings chapter 9. 1 Kings chapters 1 to 8 details all of his possessions and the temple and all that fun stuff. But in 1 Kings chapter 9, we begin to sense a change in the mood of the book of 1 Kings. So I am going to start us 1 Kings chapter 9 in verse 1. And I'm just going to keep reading until I feel like it. "And it came to pass, when Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all Solomon's desire that which he had wanted to do, the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, as he appeared to him at Gibeon. And the Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your supplication that you have made before me. I have consecrated this house which you have built to put my name there forever, and my eyes and my heart will be there perpetually. Now if you walk before me as your father David, and walk in integrity of heart and in uprightness, and do all that I have commanded you, and if you keep my statutes and judgments, then I will establish the throne of your kingdom over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, saying, you shall not fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. That's a pretty good deal. Follow the Lord, and all your descendants get to rule Israel. You get to keep your money, horses, and whatever other fun stuff you collected. But, verse 6, but if you or your sons turn from following me and do not keep my commandments and my statutes, which I have set before you, and go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land which I have given them, and this house which I have consecrated for my name will be cast out of my sight. Israel will be a proverb and a byword among all people, and as for this house, which is exalted, everyone who passes by will be astonished and hiss and say, why has the Lord done this to the land in this house? And they will answer, because they forsook the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore the Lord has brought all this calamity on them. So God gives them an ultimatum, tells them, serve me, worship me, and keep me above all, and you will get to keep what you have. But if you don't, then everything you have built will come to ruin. Well, the great news is Saul never deviated from the Lord. Thank you guys for coming. No, I'm just kidding. So, not long after, in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 1, it says, but King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, from the nations of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they will turn away your hearts after their gods. Solomon clung to these in love, and God was right. He started to pursue foreign women, and they began to turn his heart away from the one and only true God. And he began to build altars for these gods, and he began to worship at these altars. So he went from worshiping God and saying that he would only commit to God, and now he is worshiping all of these different gods from all these different people. And I know that, well, I don't think, you guys are going to go marry other people and start worshiping false gods, but that's not quite what the point is here. The point is that Solomon did something that took his attention and his focus away from the one and only God. You don't need a false god like, I don't know, Baal or whatever other gods exist. You don't need a false god to build an altar somewhere. As I have learned very, very well the hard way, you can build altars at other things in your life. I'm a mechanical engineering student at UT Arlington, and I've built an altar at mechanical engineering. I've committed a lot of my time to it, and it's great, and I should commit time to it, but at times it does take my focus away from God, and that shouldn't be the case. You can build altars at your education. You can build altars on the sports field. You can build an altar at the foot of money. You can build an altar at your relationships. And it's fine to be committed to any and all of these things, but your first commitment needs to be God. And that is where, honestly, probably all of us at some point, one or another, including myself, and obviously Solomon, turned. And let's see what exactly happened to him. So Solomon turned away from God, and yes, God did punish him, and eventually he got the kingdom stripped away from his offspring. But what happened to him in his lifetime? What did he experience? What were the symptoms? What were the effects of what happened to him? Well, that is where the book of Ecclesiastes, that is where we will go to. Because the book of Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon and is known as a very famous lament of what he begins to realize after he's pursued all these foreign women and these foreign gods. I'm just going to kind of read these verses real quick and summarize them. So Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 3 says, what profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? So after this, Solomon began to experience a loss of purpose. He had purpose building the temple and building his own palace, but then he began to realize that these weren't that big of a deal and that they weren't that important, and that when he died, he wasn't going to possess them anymore. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 13 says, and I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven, this burdensome task God has given to the sons of man by which they may be exercised. So because Solomon was pursuing some pretty heavy studying, he had a lot of burdens, some great burdens that were placed on him. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So he experienced a lot of sorrow and a lot of grief because he gathered a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And that's when he realized that his knowledge and his understanding of earthly-based things didn't really matter that much. I think he puts it best in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, in two spots. We're going to reread verse 10 real quick, and we're going to go on to 11. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I do not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had done, and on the labor in which I had toiled, and indeed all was vanity and grasping for the wind. In verse 17 he says, Therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me. All is vanity and grasping for the wind. I hated all my labor, which I had toiled under the sun for, because I must leave it to the man who comes after me. I'm kind of skipping around here a little bit. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled for under the sun. For what has man for all his labor, and for the striving of his heart, with which he has toiled under the sun? All his days are sorrowful, and his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest, this also is vanity. This, in addition to loneliness, which is detailed more in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, is what Solomon experienced. This is what he got for pursuing foreign things, for pursuing things that were God. A loss of purpose, great burdens, sorrow and grief, hating his life, and loneliness. And this is a pretty tough set of symptoms to undergo. And I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure, especially for those who are a little more seasoned in life, everyone has experienced these symptoms at some point in their life. And sometimes this is due to the circumstances we've been pushed in. I'm not saying that we're always happy when we're pursuing God, but a lot of times we get in this permanent state of sadness, sorrow, and grief, loneliness, and a loss of purpose when we forget what the number one thing in our life is. And this is what Solomon had to realize. Now, this was the end of the story. This would be really sad, but it's not, thank goodness. So we're going to move on to the final and the third stage. And that was when Solomon figured out how to understand how we live our lives, what we should do. This is best stated, again, in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 24 to 25. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment more than I? What he's trying to say here is that he was, again, established as the richest person ever. He had everything. And Solomon was saying that he should be the happiest person on earth. But he wasn't, even though he had all this stuff. So what we need to learn about all the things that we get in this life, our food, our jobs, and as Joel so puts it commonly in our finance class, our promotions, they all come from God. Every single thing, every single blessing that we get in our life comes from God. And when we begin to realize that, we can begin to count them and understand how God has blessed us. The second thing we need to do, and this, again, spoiler alert, is the conclusion of Ecclesiastes. Chapter 12, after he goes on this long rant about how depressing and vanity is used like 100 times in Ecclesiastes. But now he finally states, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work in the judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So two things we can really do to enjoy our lives to the fullest, to get over this hurdle of the symptoms that we experience when we move away from God. When you return to God, you can begin to enjoy the things that God has given you. You don't look at other people, look at Solomon, look at Jeff Bezos and say, wow, he's got all this money, he's got all this stuff. You can begin to enjoy what God has given you in your life. And the second thing you can do is put God first, to obey his commandments, because that is the work that will pay off one day when we get to see him in heaven. That is something that has unseen beneficial consequences someday. So consider what happened to Solomon. And just a quick review of what happened in his life. He had everything. All this money, all these things. He had respect, the tangibles and the intangibles. He had everything. He had wisdom. Then, after initially committing to God, he went away. And during this time, he experienced many awful things. Just things that he had to think about, consider, and realize that a lot of the stuff he had done in his life didn't really mean a whole lot. But then, once he came back and returned to God, he understood how to live his life, which is something that we all have to come to eventually if we want to have permanent satisfaction. On a completely separate note, as I told you earlier, I'm a mechanical engineering major, and I'm currently going to be a senior next year. I've committed 3 years of my life to college, and while it's not a mistake, it's been very, very difficult. College in general is very difficult. And so, as you can imagine, I'm looking forward to this year being done. So I don't have to go back to college anymore. But because I hate myself so much, I said I'm going to go to graduate school. So that's another 2 years, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So I have 3 more years of school. But fortunately, thank the Lord, there's this amazing program at UT Arlington called the Fast Track Program. And it allows me to take undergraduate classes and graduate classes simultaneously. I can take 1 class and get credit for 2 different degrees. And if I do that, I can cut off a year of my schooling. And it's called Fast Track, meaning I get to go through quickly, which is great because I want to get out of college. Why am I telling you this? The reason is that this second stage, you want to fast track your way through it. You don't want to stay in here that long. It's not very fun. It's not fun to get away from God and go out and try to satisfy yourself with other things. It just leaves you with a big gaping hole that you're never able to fill, just like that black hole. It's never able to be satisfied. So fast track your way through step 2, or stage 2, and get to stage 3, where you get to understand that you obey God first, and you get to enjoy the things that God gives you. And someday, when this life is over, you will get to have a seat in heaven, which is ultimately what we all want to do. I think that's pretty much my lesson. So again, just focus on God instead of the earthly possessions. Try to fast track through that stage 2, fast track through that period of soul searching, and just think about that. Think about that this week. Consider how you can push away the things in your life that are taking away from God. Go ahead and let's think about that now as together we stand and sing.
Wonderful story of love.